Good evening, everybody. It's Saturday, the last Saturday in Black History Month, actually. So this is it's a big deal. It should be a big deal. I'm glad to be here with you. Thanks for taking out time to be with me on Saturday evening. I'm here, you're here, but I am not here by myself. I am with my beautiful friend, and we'll talk about our friendship in a minute. But the one and only Monica Cost is here with me. Monica, how are you?
I'm
I'm
fantastic. I'm
fantastic.
so happy to
I'm
be
happy
here.
to be here. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. How have you been?
Busy.
Busy.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
this
I get it.
time of the year
Time of the
isn't
year
as
isn't
busy
as
for me
busy for
normally,
me
but I'm
normally, but
grateful.
I'm grateful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm glad you took some time out of your busy schedule to hang out with me for a little while. I've been thinking about this week in our conversation, and I'm trying to say, well, we've known each other about 10 years now. It's been about
Yeah.
10 years, and
Hmm.
I met you because my book had just come out. Love Again had just come out. I think your book had just came out about the same time, maybe
Yes.
Yes. 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So we were on Tom joined this cruise,
Hmm.
and we got thrown into doing a workshop together, and we just kind of hit it off,
Yep.
right from there, and we've stayed in touch, and it's been a great friendship, and I'm so glad that we had a chance to meet. Before we deep dive into our conversation, I want um, people to know about you and your background and your journey to what you do today.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do
I'll
the
do the
medium
medium
version.
version.
So,
So
in
in
what
what
you're
you're
hearing, do
hearing,
you
do you
hear an
hear an
echo,
echo,
or is
or
it
is it
just on
just
my
on my
side?
side? It might be just on your side.
Okay, great.
We're here
And I
now.
can
We
hear
good.
it. Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
Um,
so,
so,
geez,
geez,
that's a
that's a
long
long
story.
story.
Basically, the
Basically, the
short
short
version
version
is
is
I
I
went through
went
a
through a
period of
period of
life
life
where
where
I
I
realized
realized
I've been
I've been
living
living
into
into
other
other
people's
people's
expectations
expectations
and
and
not
not
according to
according
my
to my
own
own
values.
values.
At the
At
end
the
of the
end of the
day,
day,
that's what
that's what
happened.
happened.
I
I
was
was
married,
married,
had two
had two
children, had
children,
this
had this
wonderful high
wonderful high
visibility
visibility
job,
job,
but
but
somewhere in the
somewhere in
pit
the
of my
pit of my
belly, I
belly,
was
I was
unfulfilled. So
unfulfilled.
I
So
did
I
a
did a
deep
deep
dive,
dive,
figured
figured
out
out
that
that
it
it
was
was
these
these
expectations that
expectations
had
that
been
had been
leading
leading
me
me
and
and
not
not
my
my
own
own
core
core
value
value
system. I
system.
didn't
I
know
didn't
what
know
that
what that
was.
was.
When I
When I
found out
found
what
out
my
what my
core
core
values
values
were,
were,
I
I
literally
literally
flipped the
flipped the
apple
apple
cart of
cart
my
of my
life
life
upside
upside
down. I
down.
cut
I
my
cut my
hair, I
hair,
left
I
my
left my
job,
job.
I
I
adjusted
adjusted
my
my
emotional
emotional
life, my
life, my
spiritual
spiritual
life. I
life. I
did like
did
an
like an
overhaul.
overhaul.
And
And
that,
that
once I
once I
started
started
telling
telling
people my
people my
story,
story,
it was
it was
incredible how
incredible
many
how many
people
people
related to
related
it.
to it.
And
And
then,
then,
how
how
many
many
people
people
went from
went
what
from
I
what I
call the
call the
wow,
wow,
or the
or the
land of
land of
make
make
believe,
believe,
and
and
people were
people were
interested in
interested in
getting
getting
out.
out.
And
And
I
I
turned it
turned it
into a
into a
business,
business,
not
not
just for
just for
individuals,
individuals,
but
but
I
I
took this
took this
core
core
value
value
piece
piece
and
and
started
started
thinking
thinking
about
about
leadership and
leadership and
communication
communication
and
and
how we
how we
show up
show
in the
up in the
corporate
corporate
space. And
space.
that
And that
actually
actually
became my
became my
bread and
bread and
butter.
butter.
But the
But the
stuff I
stuff I
post on
post on
social
social
media is
media is
more a
more a
result of
result of
my
my
experience in my
experience in
own
my
life.
own life. Okay. Yeah. So let's go back to like origin stories. I love origin stories. I think you, like me, had a very traditional church background.
Hmm.
Our parents were saved and we went to church. And I'm always interested in the religion of our childhood and how that works with our adult selves or it doesn't work with our adult self. How did that kind of shape who you became?
Well,
Well,
I
I
would say
would
that
say
the
that the
church
church
provided
provided
so much good
good
stuff for
stuff for
me
me
around,
around.
it was
It
more
was more
foundational
foundation
that
that there's
that there's a
there's a
higher
higher
power, that
power, that
there's
there's
more
more
than
than
just
just
us.
us.
It
It
also
also
gave me a
gave
lot
me a
of
lot of
things to
things to
question,
question,
right? Because
right?
there were
Because there
some
were some
things that
things
were
that were
brought up
brought
that
up that
I was
I
like,
was like, I,
I mean, make that make sense to me, help me understand it.
Hmm.
Um, the community of church in terms of taking care of one another and helping other people just in general, right? You have it, they don't, you give.
Hmm.
And it taught me a lot about what I don't want, quite frankly.
Right. Right.
There's two sides to it, but um, it's interesting because my children haven't been raised the same way, and I often think if I did them a disservice at all.
Hmm.
But there were some things that I just couldn't reconcile. So anyway, they had a different upbringing. But I would say really discipline, question asking, and just the foundational understanding of God has been incredibly helpful.
Sure. So, how did the church or your parents or where did you get your first ideas about what love is and how love is expressed and gave you language around the idea of love itself?
Oh, that's good. I like that question. I'm gonna go with my mom and my maternal unit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my mother is one of those people that if anybody's in need, she's always trying to figure out how to help, how to um, get them what they need. And she was a very non-judgmental mother. So she asked her, one of her favorite questions was, if not how. And to me, that felt very loving because from my mom's perspective, I don't want to say I couldn't do anything wrong, but she always let you try. And for me, that felt very loving. So I never felt like, um, if I wanted to do gymnastics, if I wanted to play the piano, whatever that thing was, her approach to it and how she enveloped you. Like my mother never praised, she very rarely told us we were pretty or what we looked like, but she praised us for solving problems and for helping other people. And so I think for me, my mom was the epitome of love, just because of how she operated with us and how I watched her operate with other people. And the village that she set up for us
Mm-hmm.
was so lovely.
So it seems like, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that your mother's love was like a safety net,
Oh,
right?
totally.
That you could
Yes.
try anything you wanted to try, and jump, and I got you. If you fall, you're
Yes.
right here.
Yes.
How did that, as we became teenagers, young adults, how did that connect you with falling in love with your first boyfriend or childhood sweetheart or eventually marriage?
So that's a part that was missing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
My dad left when I was 5, and he has schizophrenia. So my father left because he thought our lives would be better off without him. I actually always loved my father. I felt badly that he left his family, but to me, that was the ultimate sacrifice. So I always felt like I deserved an incredible amount of love. If my dad can do that, then what you come with has got to be great. So because she dated on and off, but I can't say that I ever really fully saw her in full blooming relationship. I didn't have any expectations of relationship. My high school boyfriend was my best friend and very loving. But I had a very quilted path of romantic interaction. It wasn't, my friends with children, we really don't have time. And I think that is because I really didn't have a benchmark. Where a lot of people say, well, I want what my parents had. I don't want what my parents had. But if I like the person and we're compatible, I'm like, let's see. So I think it was harder to figure out who I was and how I wanted to be loved. That has taken a very long time, and I got clear on my career.
So what I hear you saying is that when your dad made the decision um, to leave, did you experience that as abandonment? Because from how you talk about it, you seem to say that, oh, that was a great act of love and I didn't feel abandoned. It was just this unique expression of how much he loved me and loved us.
Yes. So someone just texted me and said I'm echoing. I don't know what to do about that, but
Um, you got your microphone thing?
yes, I just need to get a plug. You know what I can do
You
is
could do it. You could go ahead. I can wait for you. I'm right here.
okay. Give me 1 second to get the
Okay.
attachment.
Okay. This is live. This is great. This is live TV right here.
Yep. Welcome to live, and thank you for
Welcome
your
to it.
patience.
Yeah, everybody. Everybody want to be on TV. This is the work
Thank you,
that goes
Tia.
right.
Okay, let's see if we can get this. That would be amazing. It's on mute from the change settings, audio.
Thank you to everybody who's hanging out with us. Thank you for that feedback too.
Yes.
We
Can
really,
you still
really
hear me?
appreciate it.
Oh,
I hear
it's
you.
still echoing now.
Okay.
I don't know what this is. I feel like that happened on. I don't know what it is.
Let me try something on my end.
Okay.
Okay, now talk.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, no echo.
You got it?
Yes, thank you.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Excellent. Thank you, Tia, for that. All right. So, yes, no, I didn't feel abandoned. I
Mm.
think it was because I understood that he loved me so much that
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't know, I don't remember how I felt at 5.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, when I was going through this whole discovery journey, one of the things that I had to take a hard look at is people have always called me strong, and they'll say, "You so nonchalant, nothing bothers you." But what I did recognize through reading this book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, was that because my dad loved me so much, or I felt like he did, and he still had to make the choice to leave, that as the 5-year-old never let that go. And so I understood that people could love you a lot and still have to make the choice to leave. So if that's true, then why really let anybody in your heart? So I had gone through my life with a bunch of disposable people. Now they didn't know it,
Right.
but you could stay or you could go. It didn't matter to me because I knew that at any time you'd have to make the choice to leave. But I had to flip that on its ear and say, I would rather experience the love still knowing that the person can still come and go, but that doesn't preclude me from loving deeply in the moment. It just becomes more of a, what I'm going to call a pure and free love, because nobody owes me anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anybody can get up at any time and decide,
Yeah.
I've had enough, or I didn't mean this, or I loved you up until now and now I don't. But you know, my purpose is bigger than any one person. I'll be sad, but I will carry on.
I'm interested in the how the strong black woman loves. Um, and that I mean that. Oof. Um, because our ideas come from our nurturing from our parents, and then it comes from our experience that you take over into your adult life, and they kind of craft out how you approach your relationships. Like, I love you, but if you need to go, I'll be good. Um, how many of those kinds of experiences do you have till you say, "Oh, well, this is affecting me even in ways I may not express to the person, but this is some type of hurt or wounding, and how do you process that?
I think you can be hurt because I don't think the point is that you could leave and I'll be good. That's not the language or the
Hmm.
feeling. I won't be good. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to maybe depressed for some period of time because I miss something that you offered or your presence in my life, whatever those things are. But over time, I mean, it's so different for everybody.
Yeah.
There's some people who don't really recover. They get bitter because they're thinking, I did this and I did that and I gave this and you walked out, which is why I tell young people, particularly young women, mean what you do. Don't keep doing this for that. Because the reality is, you could do so much for a man and him not be able to give you what you need or reciprocate. But if you didn't mean it, now you're going to resent him. You're going to be bitter. You're going to regret your decisions. No, mean what you do in the moment so that if there is no reciprocity, if that person can't live up to your expectations, that you don't regret how much you gave because there's no guarantees, if that makes sense.
No, no, no. I totally get it, and I think sometimes what I've understood as I've gotten older is when it took me a long time to get over somebody who left my life, and that's in relationships, or that's in love relationship where somebody died on me who I love dearly. I remember in 1998, my uncle, who was really pivotal to my life, and to this day, I feel the effects of what he told me all my life. He passed away from me kind of suddenly, and it was devastating. And I mean, I mourned hard for like 3 or 4 years, and it took me a long time to understand that in love, when love leaves, whether that's divorce, breakups, somebody dying on you, what I miss and what I am mourning is how I experienced myself when I was with you.
Sure.
That um, the love we had, the love we made was an expression of myself that unlocked safety for me. It unlocked laughter for me. It unlocked joy for me in a way that I can't experience with anybody else. And now that you're gone, I not only miss you, I miss that part of myself. Um, and that's the way I've kind of understood it. It's like, oh, well, this person brought out something in me that perhaps I can tap into again. Perhaps I don't want to tap into it again without them, right? Um, and so it gets how we break up, how we move on, transition from our relationship. Because just like you said, everybody doesn't stay forever. People change their mind. People want something else, and sometimes you have no other recourse than to let them to surrender to that and and be okay. And yet, with that understanding for you, you found someone, you fell in love, and you were on that traditional track of marriage, family, home, 2 kids, car, dog, and all of that. I'm interested in how Monica falls in love. Like what was that moment in your life leading up into marriage when you found your former spouse?
So what's interesting is, and I think he knows this story. I'm always, my ex-husband and I are really good. But every time I'm going to mention his name or something's coming up, I make sure that he knows because I know somebody is going to come back and say something. But right before him, I was dating, a bad boy, so to speak. And he wasn't the first one, but I felt like he needed to be the last. So when I met my to be husband, he was so kind and connected and present and interested. I mean, we met and we talked. It felt like for 16 hours, and then we finally like fell asleep for 2 hours.
Mhm.
And it was his intention about me. He saw me. I think that for me is important, because I think if you're a person who people label as strong a lot, or can handle anything, that sometimes people aren't as intentional because they think you have it all together, or they think you don't need anything. And I felt like um, he showed up in a way that let me know that he saw me. And I mean, that he was gorgeous. I mean, shoot, he was gorgeous. He literally had every check mark you could want, and he was good to me. So it was easy to fall in love with him.
What was like? What? How did you experience that emotionally? That made you, cleave or really invest yourself in this particular relationship? Because some guys, like I always go to the barbershop, have these conversations, and it's like you could be a great guy,
Mm-hmm.
you could be the best guy for her, but if she don't want you, you're just the best guy for her she doesn't want. And you can have all the checklists and will be good to her and make her whatever promise she wants to hear. But if her heart is with some other dude, and he can be so much less than you, he can be totally horrible for her. And yet, if that's where her heart is, that's just, I mean, you gotta be okay with that and walk away. So he could have all of the checklists, but you made a decision to be like, yeah, I want this to be home for me, and I want to invest. Like, what made you make that decision about him?
I think you're asking for like the secret sauce that I don't even have myself,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there have been times where there's been a man, to your point, that has all these things. If I had to make a list, he killed every last one.
yeah.
But for some reason, there's no connectivity. I can't explain it.
No,
And
I
I
get
also know the confusing part, though, Patrick, for me also, is that sometimes that chemistry that feels so strong
it. Mhm.
doesn't also mean compatibility. And that's when you're really jacked up in the head,
Right,
is when the chemistry takes you down a road and you realize sometimes the chemistry turns into like a toxicity.
right.
But because the chemistry is so strong, you make excuses for all the things that make you not compatible.
Yeah.
You can be compatible with a person but have no chemistry. It's a cruel joke.
It's
It's a
a,
really
it's
cruel
so
joke.
it's so complicated. Like it's a dance, right? Because just like you said, you can have chemistry, what my friend and I call magic. Like it's just
Yes.
unexplainable, and it's just this connection. But you all would make horrible roommates together. Like you all can't live together. Like,
No.
but you very early on you sense that chemistry and you're willing to invest, and it's kind of like on the other end of whatever decision you make, you realize, oh, I don't. This isn't. We're not compatible as much as our chemistry, right? And
Yep.
by that time, your heart is gone, right? Like you're in it. I mean, like
You're
like,
in it.
you're in it, and it's very very difficult to try to manage yourself and come to the realization. And like you said, stop lying to yourself and trying to make something work that obviously, like, it is just not. You're not compatible. You're not good for one another.
Correct. And one of the things that I do believe now, though, having done this work, is that you do have to wait for the values to show up. So, for instance, some of the things that are in my top values are variety and options, presentation, connectedness, um, open-mindedness, problem solving. And when I now that I understand my values, now I know that if I'm connecting with a man who's very traditional and prefers things just so,
Mhm.
that's one of my top values. I don't like um 2 days to look the same. I don't I don't necessarily want to have, movie night with the same couple for my whole life. I don't want to. I mean, it's nice to have these connections that repeat themselves because I love the connections, but I need the more I need variety.
Hmm.
And I now know that for men who are very routine and traditional, I'm probably going to drive them up the wall. Like, up a wall. I think that they think they wanted it, but what I say is people see the butterfly and they're like, oh, great, look at that butterfly. And then they want to catch the butterfly and put it in a jar.
Hmm.
And that's where things go wrong.
So, did you know that about yourself before you got married?
No, God, no. No. And I can't even say I wish because I learned so much in the marriage. And obviously, I wouldn't have my two beautiful boys and I wouldn't be doing this work that I do.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
no, and that's what I'm trying to teach young people, though, Patrick, is we have to teach people how to understand themselves better so that the chemistry and the lust isn't the lead.
Mhm.
You got to wait for the values and the behaviors to show up so that, because what happens is when the chemistry is so strong, you forgive things that you're only going to forgive until the honeymoon phase is over.
Right, 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 right. So knowing your personality, I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you found marriage to be very boring.
I found it to be, um, I don't know if I've said this part out loud, so, but I'm going to say it here. You've heard it here first. No. um, I found it to be it felt a little, what's the word? Not claustrophobic, but something like that. Like almost like,
No, I get it. That
yeah,
could be fun. Yeah. No, no, no.
yeah. And it wasn't that. And I need to make this clear because when I
Mhm.
say options and variety, the men I'm dating are like, oh, you want to date other people or you want to have sex with it? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the experiences with the person, right? Because there are people that love, men and women who love to know what's happening. They come home, they put the keys in the dish, they get the clothes from the cleaners, somebody's going to make dinner, somebody's already taken out, that person gets the kids, that right, their life, they like that. That's how they flow. It's a
Mhm.
dance they do that they know.
Mhm.
I'm saying that's not my jam.
Mhm.
And I'm clear about that now. So even when I'm dating someone who I really like and they like me back, I can usually tell pretty quickly if it's not gonna work. And sometimes people say, no, 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 that's fine. But I'm watching how they live, and I said, no, 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 you're not going to be fine. You're fine now because it's the beginning, it's new, it's fresh, and you're excited. But in 2 seconds, it's not going to be fine.
That that's to live with knowing that about yourself. It would seem that that might be a little lonely for you, only because we are creatures of habit, right? Our routines. And I think that's why COVID, on some level or another, these last 2 years have been very traumatic for people because we never realized how into our routines we are. And if you deviate from our routine, like I don't know how to live life, and I'm not. A lot of people aren't used to humanity. Isn't used to waking up saying, "Oh, I don't know what today is going to bring. I don't know if we could go outside. I don't know if I have to wear my mask or not." We're not used to that, and so to have that kind of personality, that kind of free spirit, it seems like most of the world perhaps is on a routine, and you're the butterfly. How do you experience that? Even, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
because to me it would seem like you would be very intuitive in your own self if you're sitting on a date and you've had 3 or 4 dates and there's something in you that triggers and said, nah, it's not gonna work, and he doesn't even know it's not gonna work, and um, hmm, this is not gonna work, and knowing that within yourself before they do seems like that's pretty lonely in and of itself too. How do you manage that?
Because I also don't throw the baby out with bathwater.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there are times where I'm like, I really enjoy spending time with this person under these circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I'm telling the truth about what I want, what I can do, what I can't do, and they're still signing on, I'm not like, oh, this isn't marriage material, I'm leaving. No.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not lonely. I think since I did this work and I really enjoy time with myself, I'm very rarely lonely, which doesn't mean I don't miss, if I go for a long period of time without dating or things, but then I don't miss the energy, right?
Yeah.
I don't miss the male energy and my presence, but I don't feel lonely. And I think that's too because my life is very rich. Like in that variety and options and open-mindedness and connectedness, I I have great villages that I'm a part of, and male and female. So I I don't meet many strangers. So I guess I don't feel lonely. I do think though, Patrick, that, and I put this video on TikTok, is that when you start to really understand yourself and your boundaries and your values and how you flow, it does make the pool of candidates way much smaller. It makes it much harder to land. And after you've been married, and if you like, I had children on purpose, I got married on purpose. So I've had the experience, so I don't feel wanting. And I know that some women,
Right.
which is why I can't speak for all women. I'm literally speaking for myself, and maybe this resonates with some people, but there are some women who've never had the experience. And so they're longing to have that, and they may or may not. So I do recognize that that's a different perspective.
So you get married and you're on the track to live the conventional happy life. When did the first tremors of this isn't, and you tell me, was it this isn't what I thought it was going to be, or this particular space and this way of living out love doesn't work for me?
I think I recognized I started to find myself. And once I found myself, I felt like it didn't, it wasn't compatible then with my husband. So it was, I sold him a bill of goods by mistake because I didn't know. So once I started uncovering, like, wait a minute, this part isn't me, and that part isn't me, and this is really who I am, and I want to do this, and I want to meet new people, and I want to go to these events, and I want it. So then I tried to present someone new, basically, right? It's not that my character was different, but the way I moved was
Yeah.
different. And I think it was unnerving. I mean, he and I have never had that conversation. There's really no need to because we're in a really good space. Like, and I'm sure he could probably watch this and be like, whatever. Like we both have our own perception and perspective of what
Right.
happened and how we got here. And it's kind of water under the bridge at this point. But
Yeah.
from my
Yeah.
recollection and how I felt is that um, it just, yeah. Anyway, that's my answer.
Yeah. No, it's a courageous decision. It's a courageous decision to be in love. If we think love is a decision, it is a courageous decision to marry someone, and it is equally, maybe not equally, I may say more courageous to realize this isn't working for me. It isn't working for us, and we both need to change because I know people who stayed in marriage and knew like this is not healthy for either one of us, but never made a decision to recreate their life and
Yes.
to let that go,
Yes.
whatever you thought it was going to be. and to go on and recreate your life and recreate yourself. Where did you find that courage from?
I think it's part of my core value system now that, that I think about is I don't know how to live in discomfort that I can change.
Mm.
So, I won't probably ever know, because again, I don't think it's worth it for he and I to talk about how we got here and why and blah blah blah. Because first of all, our memories at this point are, who knows what we're remembering. We're telling our own stories. Um, but what I felt like was I have always felt like God loves me. God, source, whatever that thing is, actually wants a good life for me.
Sure.
And my husband, labels on the table, is a good human being. Like I dig him as a human being. But
Mhm.
somehow us as a unit, he's always been who he said. Let me say that, right? He didn't change. He still bought me flowers. He did his thing. I was the one that was evolving into this space and place of, oh, well, I'm so sorry, that wasn't me, but let me try this on. And once I figured that out, it just, the puzzle pieces didn't fit anymore. And what I
Mhm.
didn't want was for my children to grow up in a love. I hate to say it because it wasn't loveless. I still love him to pieces, right?
Mhm.
Um, but love isn't the question, right? It's not about love, because I love uh, people I work with, but not in the same way that I love my mother. So love is, it's a word that we throw around, but um, we became not compatible. So everything I felt like was a bicker, because I'm being my now authentic self. He's being the self he was from the get. And we can't seem to land in a place that was comfortable. And then I didn't like it for my children. And I remember thinking that nobody in the house really knows who I am, because I felt like I hadn't really had an opportunity to be myself. So I I was very into the church at the time. In order to get an answer from God, Patrick, I fasted on water for 21 days. I
Mhm.
lost 14 pounds. I was just looking for God to say something. And I didn't have an answer at the end. So I was like, okay, maybe that is the answer. And so we just decided that we should, part ways. And I think both of us felt like, at least I did. I'm gonna speak for myself. I've always felt like divorce doesn't have to be final. Like you can get a divorce and fall back in love and get married again. So if we needed to hit reset, let's do it. But the way it was going wasn't working. And so we had a very amicable divorce.
Sure. Um, this sounds like the truest sense of it's me, it's not you, right? We you do that early on in your dating life. You're like, it's not you, it's me. It's me. But it seems like for this time, it was actually it's
It's
me.
me. It's me.
And and I don't think that we conceptualize, especially in this Western idea of marriage, that we evolve and we can evolve in a way even after we're married that makes a decision to get married not say it's wrong, but you can evolve out of that decision too. um,
Oh, here's the thing, Patrick. No, we're never taught how to be in a relationship. Like we fumble, we're stumbling into this. We look at parents, we read books, there's all these different things we're observing, but there's really not a space and place where we're taught, dig in, root yourself in yourself, and then go out into the world and find the piece that that matches you. And it doesn't mean the same exact, but it means literally somebody that matches you, what happens is, I think, and women do this a lot, is we idealize these relationships, we romanticize these relationships, and we try to make the men with the traits we've been taught to look for fit into these spaces when we actually don't even know ourselves. It just, I mean, there's a reason why the divorce rate hovers at 50 to 52%, for between 49 and 52%.
No, and I've never looked at that number and thought um, the negative about it. I've always looked at that number and be like, you get married, you grow, you learn something about yourself, and you realize that perhaps I should not have made this decision for myself at that time in my life. And so I am making a choice to reclaim my life. And sometimes maturity is, we need a divorce so you can have a chance to be happy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can have a chance to be happy, because you're not going to be happy with me. And I'll say this about my former marriage. And again, like I respect my former wife, and we're good. So we're fine. She's good. We're good. Um, but there were a lot of times where I felt like you wanted to be married. You discovered you really didn't want to be married to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you cast me in a role, because for young people, especially church young people, it's like, oh, I have to get married. This is just what the way life is.
Yep.
And so, we liked each other, got married, and then realized, I want to be married, and I don't know if I want to be married to you, because there are some things you don't learn about somebody until after you make that decision, and you quickly realize, or sometimes not quickly, sometimes it takes a long time to realize, like, oh, mm, you're this experience, and like you said, we have this idealized fairy tale about what this is going to be, and
Yep.
then, like, life happens for real,
Yep.
and it's like, perhaps I didn't know myself enough to make that kind of mature decision that I can live with today, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, and it takes a lot of courage to know that, and it takes even more courage to do something about it.
Yes,
Uh,
but this is the thing. A friend of mine said, we were just exploring this thing. She's happily married. I like their marriage. Not doesn't mean anything, but I'm just saying I don't think they're one of the ones that are faking it. But she said to me, "Wouldn't it be cool if we could get married in terms? You sign up for a 5 year, a 2 year, a 10 year,
he
and
ran re up.
in 6 months, six
Right.
months, 6 months before your term is up, you meet with a mediator to decide if you're going to renew. And if you're going to renew, then these are the things that you do to meet the person's needs so that you can actually renew. And that might take the stigma, because I think some people, one of the tricky things about this core value thing is, if you find out that one of your values is loyalty, those are the people that stay the most in the unhappy marriages, because they feel like they have to, right? They're loyal. They signed up for it. They signed a contract. I'm not reneging on it. I'm going to push through for forever.
And then it becomes even more complicated when you throw God and church and our Black Christianity on top of that. Then it gets even more complicated, because there, on some level, perhaps, like, this is a bad decision. But, oh, if I made a decision before God and the church, and we had the wedding, and if this doesn't work, or we get divorced, then I'm gonna be cursed, or God doesn't love me anymore. And so you go through these changes, trying to wiggle out, or trying to find some respite in your life, because you're depressing who you are to fit into a decision that you made at a time that perhaps you didn't know yourself enough to make.
Oh my
And
God.
you live in this thing where I used to do this was a long time ago. This is when I was married. You wake up before they wake up, and you're looking at them trying to see if they're still alive or not, because you're trying to be like, are you breathing? Oh, I can't get out of this. You made the choice,
Yeah,
and I understand divorce as I have experienced it, and as psychologists experience it, is that it's a type of death that you grieve. Um,
absolutely.
and
Even when it's
perhaps,
right.
huh?
Even when it's right.
Sure, sure. How was the aftermath of that for you?
I think it was mostly okay because I'd come to terms in the marriage. My goal, my goal was to leave. I've had it on Do Not Disturb, but my goal was to make sure that we both left as whole as possible. So we didn't, there's different ways of getting divorced. There are people that had infidelity and, abuse. So every divorce is different. Let me state that. So we didn't have a thing really. But the aftermath was probably the toughest part for me was telling people that I'm getting a divorce or I'm divorced. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I just in general, even if I felt badly in the moment, I don't like pity. It's not a thing for me. Like I'm not the person, oh, you must be so sad. You must be so then I started saying to people, why are you sorry? And that would make them start stuttering because I mean, I
Right.
guess this divorce is
It's very uncomfortable. Like,
and what I wanted them to do, Patrick, was to get to the point of asking a question instead of making an assumption.
yeah.
And so, again, the hardest part was one, it was people saying, well, wait, why are y'all getting a divorce again? Like trying to explain. And I felt like I had to find an
Right.
explanation for people until I stopped. And I said, because it didn't work. And that's all, because I don't owe you anything. It is private between he and I. And then I just worked with the other people who gave me oh, it must be so hard for you. Or they started talking badly about him. And I'm like, hey. Mm-mm,
Right.
mm-mm, mm-mm. Not our story. Please
Yeah.
don't. We're
Yeah.
fine. Yes, it's hard. It's hard, but please don't.
So in the aftermath, you're free now, and that must have been a. How did you experience that freedom? Was it like, oh, I can breathe now, or was it kind of like I'm free, but I'm a little guilty? Like,
My guilt came for the kids, not about the marriage.
okay,
Because
what was
we
that
were,
like for you?
I'm sorry,
What was that like for you?
hard. That part was hard. Splitting the kids' time. I remember the first weekend I didn't have them. I ran myself a bubble bath. I poured some champagne. I lit some candles. And in my mind, I was about to have this fabulous, kid
Hmm.
free. And I cried the entire time because I'm thinking, what kind of mother isn't with their kids? Like, what are you doing? Ruining the family, blah, 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 all these things. But then what I realized for me, again, I'm speaking for myself, I became a more present mother after divorce. Because when we were a unit, my husband at the time, he's a very present father, very involved, very hands-on. And when, excuse me, when my work was very demanding, he was the primary caregiver. So he got the kids up, got them to daycare, picked them up, most of the time made dinner. I came home for bath and bedtime stories. So yeah.
Yeah. So when you said that, um, so like I work with a trainer, right? And my trainer, um, when we do like bench press, chest work, arms day, or whatever, he doesn't like me to use the bar.
Okay.
Um, he wants me to use the dumbbells, right? One dumbbell in this hand, a dumbbell in this hand, and do chest presses, because he says that if you use the bar, if your left shoulder is weaker than your right shoulder, then your right shoulder is going to overcompensate,
Oh, that's a
right?
good point.
So so even though it's not performing the way it should, you're going to still lift the bar, because that one shoulder that's stronger is going to make sure that you get it up. When you
Yes.
use the separate dumbbells, every both shoulders have to do their own work,
Yes.
right? You can't cheat. Either you're gonna lift it or you're not gonna lift it,
Yeah.
which means you can gauge how strong you are in each arm. And if the left shoulder is weaker, then it needs to do its own work to get it stronger. And when you said that, it's kind of like, well, I can understand that if you're in a marriage, he can perform, and be present, and let you not be present, because you're going to depend on him. He got it. He's got the
Oh,
kids or
that's so
whatever,
good.
and that you can do it. It seems to me when you said that you became more present, it's kind of like, oh, if I was weaker in the marriage, I had to do the work to become stronger on my own, so you can meet his strength, right? If he
Yeah.
was there already, you
Yeah.
can come up, and then your kids could get a more stable, balanced emotional environment for both of you all. That's powerful, right?
That
It may
sounds
not be ideal. Yeah, it may not be ideal. It may not be traditional.
mhm.
But what more do you want than for both parents to be present for their kids that way?
Totally. And thank you for bringing that back around. For 2 seconds, I was like, wait, what was the question? You talked about the guilt part. And the being present was because when the kids were with him, then I was able to do me, to work harder, work late, and do so that when
Sure.
they showed up, I was prepared for them, and it was just me and them
Mhm.
cooking and watching TV. Versus, to your point, when it was the two of us, it was easy for somebody to be stronger than the other in parenting. So for that part, I appreciate. And one of the things I always respected and appreciated about him was the way he parented. Like, I think, I'm making this up, and if he ever sees this, he might be like, no. So I'm gonna just say, I don't know that he feels this way. But I
Mhm.
low key almost feel like the reason why neither of us ever got married again is because we like our unit. We're still a unit. We have a family group chat. We have family meetings at the dining room table when something's going on with the boys. We talk a lot about things that are happening between households. And when you bring somebody else in that's going to be your forever partner, you have to kind of let them have a say in parenting your children.
Mhm.
And they have a dad. And that would mean, which is interesting because now I got to think back around the men that I've dated. That would mean that you trust that person enough to participate in the parenting of your children. And for me, not for everybody. For me, that's a big step. And I,
True.
I think that we chose not to, but, in an unwritten rule.
Yeah. Um, so you went through the divorce, you kind of found your equilibrium as a parent, and then you started doing some work. When I met you, you had written a book. Um,
The things I used to do to sneeze.
yes, I knew
Hmm.
sneeze was in the title somewhere, because we
Hmm.
we talked about it. Um,
Yes.
Writing for me, Love Again, was cathartic. It was therapeutic. I haven't read it. I picked it up this year because it's 10 years. So I picked it up and was like, oof, if I could go back and rewrite that. I understand the place that I was in. Perhaps
Mhm.
I would say it different, use different language. I would express this a little more and give more context to this or to that. You wrote the book, and what was that experience like for you, and how do you understand that particular work? these years later?
Yeah. So I ended up having 3 versions of my book for the very reason that you're talking about. I called myself for a while the accidental author because
Right.
what I felt like what happened was when I was going through a divorce, that was like the final key to me. It's like it almost felt like a pregnancy that I didn't know. But once I went through the divorce, I felt like all this stuff inside of me was ready to come out. And I was actually seeing someone at the time who encouraged me to write the book. And I was just like, well, how do you write a book? And he explained a process, and we went through and created these chapters. And literally, Patrick, I sat down, I think in August to start writing this book. And I felt like 8 weeks later, I think it was 8 to 9 weeks later, there was this body of work. I just kept writing. Some days I wouldn't even take a bath. Like I would take the kids to school, come home, eat a sleeve of Oreos, and keep typing. It just kept pouring out and pouring out and pouring out. And so I again, I didn't have a budget to release a book or get a book edited. I think my friend Janae and I edited the book, and it had tons of typos because we're not copywriters or editors.
Right.
It was, the concepts were good, but the writing was there. I mean, to the point where this one woman who I don't even know who she is now, she was like, I really enjoyed, I get what you're trying to do. She was like, but we can't. She literally went through the book with a red pen and did all these updates and whatever. So anyway, finally, 2 versions later, I found an editor Veronica Tuggle, who just took such good care of the book and organized the content and then asked me more questions so that there was way more depth.
Right.
But it was certainly therapeutic, beyond therapeutic. And it also let me know that I was on the right track. I think the biggest thing for me is that I had a body of work that wasn't just good for me, but could actually free other people.
And you've been doing that work ever since we met. And I've watched you create and recreate and touch a lot of people's lives with the work that you've done. But we've all been through the last 2 years with COVID and experiencing what's happening in the world. And even as we're talking right now, what's going over in
Russia.
Ukraine. Yeah, it's horrible. How have you evolved during this time?
So, I have become way more aware, even more aware. There's no destination. I don't think I'm ever going to arrive. I don't ever want to arrive. I always want to be a work in progress. How I've evolved is figuring out even more so who and what's important. So spending, similar to when I went through the whole part of turning my life upside down, I feel like I've gone through this next phase of no more one-way streets, right? So the things and the people in my life, they don't have to give equally or in the same manner, but they have to be given. So if I identify spaces and places where I'm the only one pouring in, I stop that. I stop that flow of energy and I give it somewhere where energy is being given back to me. That's probably been the biggest thing for me. I mentioned this earlier of this nonchalantness. It's not I don't think it's nonchalantness, but another thing is I've become even more committed to this idea of this spirit having this human experience, and that so much of what we experience is just a story it's this mental chatter. It's the story we make up in our heads. And what you focus on gets bigger. So when things are falling apart in the world, do I know about them? Sure. But do I consume them at a high rate? Absolutely not. So many times where people are like, oh, things are so terrible. It is butterflies and roses over here. And not because I'm unaware, but because if there's nothing I can do about it, then I'm not going to sit here and focus on it just to, keep ruminating in this space of negativity. I'm going to focus on the things that when people used to ask me during COVID, how are you doing? I said, well, we're just focusing on the things that we can and are able to do, and not the things that we can't and are unable to do. And that was life changing for us. We were able to gather with friends on the deck and, be socially distanced and have drinks. And we were able to take walks and go on hikes. And we were able to Zoom call with. So, what are we able to do? Well, we can't, we know what we can't do, but what are we able to do? And I think every time there's a turn of events, that's what I'm focused on. Okay, now what can I do now that
Yeah.
we're in this space?
I totally agree with that. I don't know if I'm it's because I'm getting older. It could be getting older. Hopefully, it's getting a little wiser. Where you recognize relationships, friendships, spaces that I recognize them when they don't feed me. Right. When I am giving out and nothing's coming back in, I think I've become more aware of my own energy and my own strength to realize I can't do everything and focus in on everything that I used to.
That's right.
So it's like, you know, if I need to focus and I can focus, like what's giving back to me,
Hmm.
because those are open channels that are nourishing for me. Um, and I think it's something to come to a point in life where you realize even old friendships you have, this doesn't feed me. Like I'm not. You are absolutely exhausted, and I cannot. I know we've been doing this for 20 years. I can't do this with you anymore.
Correct.
Um, whether that's with friends, sometimes that it's with family. Like
Yeah.
I this doesn't work for me because it's not nourishing me. Um, that's pretty powerful, especially in times like these, like you said, with everything going on around us, and even before COVID, even before Ukraine, could have been Black Lives Matter, what we were experiencing with George Floyd, and all the rest of those instances that we've experienced, and today it's been 10 years since um, Trayvon Martin was killed, and
Mhm.
we've experienced all of this in the last 10 years. And I say to myself, and I've said to friends, it's like, well, you can't keep ingesting all of this on a 24-hour loop. It becomes toxic when you take it in and you're not breathing it out, and it's suffocating you. Where do you find for you? I know we talked about your family, the boys who you love, and your tribe, but for you yourself, where do you find um, air, um, that you can breathe in deeply and know that you're alive, and um, there's
Yep.
grace for you, and you experience all of that? Where do you find that for yourself?
In this belief that, in the belief that I have this breath, right? This, my friends laugh at me sometimes. This is just the avatar, right?
Hmm.
But there's a spirit that's driving the avatar every day. So I decide my breath that is in these lungs gets to decide what to do with the avatar every day. But I recognize that I'm not the body I'm in, and I'm not the life I'm living. It just happens to be where my spirit got dropped into. And so this understanding helps me not to take this all so seriously, because I also believe, this is just my personal beliefs, that I really don't believe that energy is destroyed. So if for some reason I should leave this earth tomorrow, like, I'm not afraid. I believe my energy is going to go somewhere else. I don't know where that is, but it allows me to have more clarity and be more present, because I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I can enjoy. I can
Yeah, I
enjoy
get it.
whatever I choose to enjoy, because I don't take the journey so personally, right? Like, let's say if Uh, okay, I would. We weren't wealthy growing up, but let's say I have a wealthy friend. Now, I didn't understand this at that age, but let's say now there's somebody who had all these opportunities coming up from the time they were younger. Maybe they grew up poor, but they had one person who believed in them. They grew up poor and they asked for a loan. Whatever that trajectory was, that change, a lot of this is really, I don't even want to call it dumb luck, but so much of what we have, we don't actually deserve. We just happen to get dropped in a journey that created this path. So in that, I can't take my life so seriously and whatever accomplishments, which is why it's not something that I lead with, because I know that there was a grace extended for me to even have the bandwidth to do some stuff, where there are some people who can't even focus on a goal or a strategy. They're like, anyway, about this light bill, anyway, about trying to get these kids fed, anyway, about, right, my mom is sick and so they have all these other things. It is not lost on me that when I have space and place to even contemplate my next move, like, I don't take credit for that. I don't take credit for the thing. I'm a conduit. And I don't know the source, God, whatever it's called, that's providing this. But I think that at the end of the day, Patrick, my answer is I don't take it all so seriously.
I am amazed at your intention to live into your life. And what I mean by that is a lot of us, like we talked about, we're creature habits. We do what we do. And we never give thought to, is this the life that I want? Am I happy? Am I being fed? Am I feeding those who I love around me? And am I happy?
Yeah.
Um, and and I'm amazed at the questions we don't ask ourselves. And it's the questions that go unanswered that cause us really not to live our life. Perhaps the life that we want or feel like we deserve. And your ability, your courageousness to live intentionally like that is just, it's wonderful to me. And
Thank you.
it's inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and talking with me. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
this was so fun.
it. Before I let you go, I have a like five burner questions, right?
Okay.
Rapid fire questions, and then I'll let you go. Okay. Number one, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe in heaven?
It was rapid fire, right?
Take your time. The questions are rapid fire. Your answers don't have to be rapid fire. It's fine.
All right, this is live, so I just realized I have to plug in my computer. Do I believe in heaven?
Mhm.
Oh, uh, mm,
Mm.
can I say maybe? I have to say yes or no.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe,
Maybe.
perhaps.
I'm not
Hopefully,
sure.
any of that works.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything.
Okay. Okay. Um, what do you know about love that you didn't know then?
That it should be free. That you can't own it, which means you have to be comfortable. It's like your heart valve. You have to be comfortable with it coming and going, and recognizing that it could come from many different sources. Yeah. I feel like I had a more myopic view of what it should look like and feel like, which then made me dismiss so much love that was actually in my life.
I love it. Next question. Um, what is a good lover to you?
Someone who wants to know, they want to understand your pleasures before their own.
I like it. Okay. Next question. Where do you find joy?
Oh God, everywhere.
Mm.
I mean, literally everywhere. Like, I look at my book and I can't believe I wrote it. I um, think about my son playing basketball, and I'm just like, how amazing is it that all his limbs are working? Um, Hot showers, just chef's kiss to the water pressure. Getting under my weighted blanket at night and just being grateful that I have a bed to get into. Like there's so many, and I think
Yeah.
that's just the part of the work. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Sitting here talking to you, like I'm smiling like a goofy little girl, but I'm like I'm
I'm a,
really.
I'm a joy. What can I say? You know?
This is true. True. Yes, you are a joy.
I think
Yes,
so. Like,
yes, yes. But I for
last,
sure find joy by the water. So let me get. I
Mhm.
find joy by the water in the ocean. I find
I've
joy
seen
in
you
being.
jump into an ocean before, so
Yeah,
that
yeah,
looked amazing.
yes, yes, yeah, for sure.
Last question. What has changed about yourself during COVID?
I think my understanding of the importance of authentic connections, to not waste time. Not that the people are a waste of time, but sometimes our connections are a waste of time. We shouldn't be connecting. You should be over there, and I should be over here. And being able to dial those relationships differently without offending people, but spending less time because it's not, as they say on TikTok, it's not given what it's supposed to have gave. It's not. It's not yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking out the time to come hang out with me. If people wanted to connect with you um, online and follow your work, where can they find you at?
Probably the one-stop shopping is thecorevaluecompany.com.
Mhm.
But I'm on Facebook under Monica Cost. I think I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on everything under either Monica Cost or Monica Hairston Cost. And then I think on IG, Monica Cost underscore the butterfly.
The butterfly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that about sums it up. Thank you, Monica.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I
That was
appreciate
good.
you. Thank you for everybody who hung out with us. I really appreciate you. Thank you for spending some time with us. We'll be back next week for another episode. Until then, wear your mask, socially distance yourself, and I'll see you next week. All right. Bye bye.